Hello everyone, today I bring you one of the most chilling and baffling mysteries in modern history, a case that has puzzled investigators, journalists, and mystery enthusiasts for decades. It is the story of Hoer Verde, a village in Brazil that, according to reports, vanished overnight. No bodies, no signs of violence, and no rational explanation. Imagine waking up one day to discover that an entire town had simply ceased to exist, its inhabitants gone without a trace, leaving behind only silence, abandoned homes, and questions that no one has ever been able to answer. This is not just an urban legend, but a story that has been retold and investigated for many years, one that continues to haunt the imagination of anyone who hears it. To understand this case, we need to start by setting the scene. Hoer Verde was said to be a small Brazilian village, nestled in the countryside and home to around 600 residents. The people who lived there were farmers, families, workers, and children, all carrying out their daily lives in peace, far away from the chaos of the cities. For the most part, Hoer Verde was considered an ordinary community, not particularly wealthy or influential, but stable and rooted in tradition. The people of the town had built their lives on trust, connection, and shared survival, as so many rural communities do. Yet, in the mid-1920s, the story goes, this normal village would become the center of one of the strangest disappearances ever recorded. The first reports about Hoer Verde's disappearance came from travelers and nearby residents. Imagine walking into a town you had visited only weeks earlier, only to find every door unlocked, meals left unfinished on tables, personal belongings untouched, but no people anywhere in sight. Chickens still roamed, dogs barked at strangers, clothes hung on washing lines, but not a single human soul remained. That was what witnesses claimed to see when they arrived in Hoer Verde. The entire village seemed to have been abandoned at the exact same moment, as though the 600 residents had all stood up at once and walked away, never to return. Now, the sheer impossibility of such an event is what makes it so fascinating. If this had been the result of war, we would expect to see evidence of struggle. If disease had struck, we would expect to find bodies or signs of illness. If famine had occurred, there would still be people left behind, or at least records of migration. But in Hoer Verde, nothing, only emptiness, and when investigators arrived, they found no explanation. The people had left their possessions, their tools, their animals, their homes, everything behind. Some reports even describe a chilling detail, a blackboard in the village school with a haunting message written across it. The words supposedly said, "There is no salvation." What did this mean? Was it the desperate warning of a teacher, a message from the villagers themselves, or perhaps a clue left behind by something else entirely? Whether this detail is factual or a later addition to the story remains unclear, but it has become one of the most disturbing elements of the mystery. As the story spread, theories began to emerge. Some believed that the villagers had been forced to leave due to bandits or military conflict, although no such events were ever recorded in the region. Others suggested that toxic gas or an environmental disaster might have driven the people away, yet no scientific evidence has ever been presented to confirm this. More outlandish explanations include alien abduction, supernatural intervention, or even a mass disappearance into another dimension. The case has often been compared to other mysteries, such as the Roanoke colony in North America, where settlers vanished without a trace in the 1500s, or the famous Marie Celeste ship found abandoned at sea with meals left uneaten and no crew aboard. But before we dive deeper into theories, let us walk through what is claimed to have happened, step by step. According to historical accounts, a Brazilian military patrol entered Hoer Verde in 1923 while traveling through the area. To their shock, they found the village completely deserted. Houses were left in order, with cooking fires still smoldering and meals half prepared. Tools were scattered, as though workers had abandoned their tasks suddenly. The silence was overwhelming. Not even one resident could be found. The soldiers searched thoroughly. They examined the houses, the fields, the school, and the town square. But there were no bodies, no footprints leading away, and no clear evidence of struggle. 600 people had seemingly dissolved into thin air. Disturbed and unsettled, the patrol reported their findings, and soon Hoer Verde became infamous. Now, it is important to note that many historians question whether Hoer Verde truly existed at all. Some argue that the story is a myth, a legend passed down over time, blending elements of real events with folklore. They claim there is no official record of such a town, no census data, and no verifiable reports outside of newspaper articles and second-hand accounts. Yet others insist the story is true, and that the absence of records may itself be suspicious. Was there an attempt to cover up what happened? Was the truth deliberately erased? Whether real or exaggerated, the tale has taken on a life of its own. The very possibility that an entire community could vanish overnight sparks something deep in the human mind. It forces us to confront our fear of the unknown, our recognition that despite all our knowledge and technology, there are still mysteries we cannot explain. In exploring Hoer Verde, we also uncover the psychology of mystery itself. People are drawn to stories like this because they sit at the edge of reality and legend. They provide just enough factual detail to be unsettling, yet just enough ambiguity to allow imagination to fill the gaps. And in the case of Hoer Verde, the gaps are enormous. As we move forward in this story, we will examine the different theories about what might have happened to the villagers. Were they victims of violence, disease, or environmental disaster? Did they willingly abandon their homes, perhaps under religious influence, or in search of a new life? Or did something stranger, something beyond human understanding, intervene? In the next part of this story, we will dig deeper into the theories and evidence, unraveling the many layers of this chilling mystery. But for now, let us sit with the image of an empty village in the heart of Brazil, a place once filled with laughter, voices, and life, now reduced to silence and unanswered questions. The truth about Hoer Verde may never be known, but the legend continues to spread, capturing the imagination of those who hear it. And as with all great mysteries, perhaps what makes it most powerful is not the possibility of finding an answer, but the haunting realization that some questions will forever remain unanswered. The haunting silence of Hoer Verde was only the beginning. Once word spread about the discovery of the deserted village, journalists, investigators, and researchers began piecing together every clue, trying to build a timeline of events. The mystery of an entire community disappearing without a trace was too strange to ignore, and yet, the more people tried to make sense of it, the more questions emerged. The most immediate theory was that Hoer Verde had been attacked, perhaps by bandits or even by military forces. After all, Brazil during the early 20th century was not free from unrest. Conflicts between government forces and rebel groups were not uncommon, and remote communities were often vulnerable. Could it be that Hoer Verde's 600 residents had been massacred or forced to flee? But investigators found no signs of violence. No bullet holes, no burned homes, no blood, no scattered belongings that suggested panic. Everything looked eerily normal, as though the residents had calmly walked away. If bandits had attacked, why was there no evidence? Why leave behind valuables and animals? The second theory pointed toward disease. Perhaps the villagers had been struck by a sudden and deadly illness, and in their desperation, they abandoned the village in search of help. Yet, once again, there were no bodies. 600 people could not have carried away their sick, and dying without leaving traces. And if they had left together, surely someone, somewhere, would have seen them or recorded their arrival in another place. But no such record exists. Some researchers speculated about natural disasters. Could there have been a toxic gas leak from underground, perhaps volcanic activity or chemicals released into the air? This could explain why the villagers might have left suddenly. But if this had been the case, the soldiers who discovered the town should have been affected as well. They were not. The food was still fresh, the air was breathable, and the environment seemed stable. There was no evidence of an invisible threat. It is here that the story begins to cross the line from rational explanation into the realm of the supernatural and the unknown. One of the most enduring theories is that the people of Hoer Verde were victims of something otherworldly. Some believe they were abducted by extraterrestrials, pointing to the sudden and complete nature of their disappearance. After all, what kind of force could remove 600 people instantly without leaving a trace? Alien abduction stories often describe missing time, unexplained vanishings, and strange messages. Could the mysterious words scrawled on the school blackboard, "There is no salvation," be linked to something beyond human comprehension? Others suggest a more metaphysical explanation. Perhaps the entire village crossed into another dimension or parallel reality. Stories of sudden disappearances, vanishing people, and entire groups being swallowed by the unknown appear in folklore across the world. Could Hoer Verde be an example of a community slipping between the cracks of our reality into another? It sounds impossible, yet the absence of evidence makes this idea strangely compelling. Religious explanations have also surfaced. Some suggest the villagers were caught up in a mass religious movement, perhaps convinced by a charismatic leader to abandon their homes and seek a new beginning elsewhere. Throughout history, groups have been known to follow leaders into isolation, disappearing from society entirely. Could this be the fate of Hoer Verde's residents? If so, why did they leave so abruptly, and why was no trace of them ever found again? Did they hide so well that they were erased from history, or did something terrible befall them once they left? The comparisons to the Roanoke colony in North America are striking. In the late 1500s, over 100 settlers vanished from Roanoke Island, leaving behind only the carved word Croatoan. Like Hoer Verde, there were no bodies, no evidence of struggle, just a community gone. The parallels between these two cases suggest that humanity has long faced mysteries that defy explanation. But what if these are not coincidences? What if they are connected by something greater, a pattern we have yet to understand? Skeptics, however, argue that the entire story of Hoer Verde may be nothing more than legend. They point out that there is little verifiable historical record of the village's existence, while newspaper articles, retellings, and second-hand reports keep the story alive. No official documents confirm that Hoer Verde ever appeared on maps or government registries. Could it be that this story is a fabrication, perhaps a folktale born out of smaller disappearances that were exaggerated over time? Maybe Hoer Verde is less of a place and more of a cautionary tale, a story told to remind us of the fragility of life and the possibility of losing everything overnight. Yet, even if Hoer Verde was nothing more than a legend, its power lies in its ability to terrify and intrigue. Legends often reveal more about human fears and imagination than about historical fact. They serve as mirrors, reflecting our anxieties about safety, community, and the unexplained. Whether Hoer Verde was real or not, it continues to live in the minds of those who hear about it. But what if the truth is somewhere in between? Perhaps Hoer Verde was a real community, but its disappearance was less dramatic than the stories suggest. Maybe the villagers were located due to economic hardship, lack of resources, or political pressure, and the tale of their disappearance grew stranger with each retelling. Over time, the ordinary reality of migration transformed into the chilling story of mass vanishing. In this way, Hoer Verde's mystery could be a combination of truth and myth, fact and folklore intertwined. What keeps the story alive, however, are the unanswered questions. If Hoer Verde was real, where did its people go? Why has no one ever found descendants or records of their migration? And if it was not real, why have so many sources repeated the tale, giving it the weight of credibility? The possibility that a mystery can live so strongly without proof is in itself a mystery worth exploring. Today, Hoer Verde remains one of those strange stories passed along in the world of mysteries and the unexplained. It appears in books, documentaries, and online discussions, always raising the same questions, always leaving listeners unsettled. And perhaps that is the ultimate power of the tale, not whether it is true or false, but the way it forces us to confront the unknown. When we hear about Hoer Verde, we are reminded of how fragile human existence can be. A town, a community, an entire way of life can vanish in an instant, whether by natural disaster, violence, or something stranger. The thought that one day, without warning, everything familiar could be erased, is a fear deeply rooted in the human mind. So, was Hoer Verde a real village swallowed by an unknown force? Was it a fabricated legend that grew into myth? Or was it something in between, a story that has shifted with time, but still carries fragments of truth? We may never know. The silence of Hoer Verde continues to echo across history, unanswered and unsettling, and perhaps that is exactly why the story endures. Mysteries like Hoer Verde remind us that the world is larger and stranger than we can ever fully understand. Some answers may forever remain hidden, and maybe that is the point. Because in the end, what terrifies us most is not the darkness itself, but the realization that we may never know what lies within it.